Hi, we're here with the first video of today, and we're going to be talking about the election and a lot of the supposed voter fraud. But I mean, it looks pretty legit. Um, First, we've got from the Daily Mail breaking news: counting stops in crucial cities of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh as Trump lawsuit over watching tally goes to state Supreme Court, and he vows to sue every state where Biden has won after demanding stop the count. I mean, especially after what happened on election day, they literally stopped counting. That's never happened before. And they decided all of a sudden, when they were supposed to have stopped counting, apparently they were only counting then Biden votes. And probably roughly almost 250,000 votes across like 3 states showed up out of nowhere at 4 a.m. after they were supposed to have stopped counting. 0 votes for Trump, 0 votes for Joe Jorgensen, 0 votes for Kanye, 0 votes for everybody else that was on the ballot. But somehow Biden got all 100% of them. Now the left is trying to claim that it's just an error. It's a counting error, but it hasn't been fixed. They're still now trying to claim that Biden then won, that those votes are legit. And it's looking pretty sketchy for the Biden campaign. But then again, Joe Biden did say that they do have the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in American history. So, yeah. I mean, he came out, right? He already came out and said that they already have a voter fraud organization. And apparently, it's quite extensive, and it's trying to help them win, especially in Wisconsin and Michigan. Oh boy, there's so much to go over. Here we've got from Newsweek: Donald Trump made gains in every demographic except for white men. It says President Donald Trump upped his vote share across demographics in 2020, except for with white men, according to exit polling. According to Edison Research's exit poll, the Republican incumbent is up with black men and women, Latino men and women, and white women. With black men, his vote share went up 5% from 13% in 2016 to 18%. With black women, it doubled from 4% to 8%. Apparently, Native Americans, a huge margin of Native Americans voted for Trump. Cuban Americans, a huge margin. That's pretty much what swung Florida into Trump's favor, was the pretty much the Cuban American community for the most part. And I guess the progressives have the some white people, I guess, people that just aren't paying attention, that have probably always voted Democrat, or people that just hate Trump because they've succumbed to what the mainstream says about him. They won't even look further. They won't try to do any more research beyond that, beyond, I guess, headlines at the most. Also from the Daily Mail: the election America and the world is watching grinds to a halt as Nevada and Arizona say they can't finish counting the last 250,000 votes that could decide it until tomorrow, as Trump vows to sue every state where Biden's won. Yeah, they keep claiming that they can't count this stuff, but Florida managed to count over 20 million votes in one day, but then some of these states can't even count like 5 million votes, and it's taking them 3-4 days, and these are, key states that could have Trump win. So it's looking super suspicious. We've got then from Vice: confused. Trump supporters can't decide whether to stop the count or count every vote. Vice is going to try to say, they're just being they're being idiots, and they can't decide what they want. But one, the stop the count is to ensure that Republican poll watchers are actually allowed into these counting areas. They are being denied. They're literally being denied. That's the stop the count, and the count every vote is in Arizona, where there's been apparently, a Sharpie mishap, and people's votes aren't being counted because of it, and they want their vote counted. And, a lot of them actually go to Trump. So it's more more and more sketchy stuff, and Vice is going to try to cover for the left and say, oh, dude, they're just being idiots. They don't know what they want. It's like, yeah, they know what they want. And if anyone does any tiny bit of research into it, they'd understand what each of these phrases mean. You got from Gateway Pundit, we watch Ballot Count Watcher describes at least 130,000 ballots, all for Biden, arriving in 3 vehicles in Detroit in dead of night. So I'll try to go over we'll go over some of the video. You can see there's a wagon here. He's got like a cooler. White van had showed up. He goes inside with a wagon, and apparently it's just filled with ballots. There was, I guess, a Ferrari that showed up. Here's the passage of it. In the testimonial originally posted to Facebook Live, the woman says that people who were there counting ballots throughout the evening were ready to shut down when suddenly a white van, a Chrysler 300, and a Ferrari pulled up with over 130 additional ballots. As they started counting the ballots, he was astonished that every single ballot, literally 100% of 130,000 ballots, were all Biden ballots that had been delivered to the precinct before the cutoff time, she explained. We literally had people that watched it happen, she continued. We have poll challengers that have been barred from being able to get into this room to challenge ballots. We've had GOP members removed from the room. She explained that there's a large disparity between Democrats and Republicans being allowed into the ballot counting room ever since the mystery ballots showed up. I mean, we're getting pictures of these counters that just have, Biden masks on, and we've seen the videos of them getting angry over the counting, and then they start kind of, not necessarily they're ripping up ballots, but they're definitely crumbling them up and throwing them off to the side. Here we've got, after NBC News report, Facebook takes down page of group that called for Trump supporters to show up at Detroit vote counting center. NBC News reporter Brandy Zadrozny reported late Wednesday night that following her report for NBC News with Ben Collins, Facebook had taken down the page of the group that called for Trump supporters to show up at the Detroit, Michigan vote counting center earlier Wednesday. The Detroit vote counting center was the scene of alleged irregularities and intimidation by Democrats running the court. Republican poll watchers were routinely thrown out and windows covered up to block observers. No violence was reported to have occurred among the boisterous Trump supporters gathered outside. Yeah, they weren't violent. They weren't trying to bust their way in. They just demanding that they be allowed to actually watch this happen, and they're not being allowed to. And you can see here, Michigan poll watcher ballots were turned in with no names on them. And you can see that their guy is putting up, blocking the windows, and they're just not allowing people to actually watch. And then you have the left going like, well, they've got cameras on the inside, and there's obviously people in there, and blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, they're still not being transparent. They're still denying people being able to actually watch the polls, watch the counting. So it's still sketchy. It still needs to go under investigation, regardless. They say, with a governor like corrupt Democrat Gretchen Whitmer, it comes as no surprise that Democrats would turn in ballots with no names on them. This is exactly why Americans voted for President Trump in overwhelming numbers. Americans are tired of Democrat corruption. We want the swamp drained. This morning, it's reported that in Michigan, votes were turned in with no name on them. They say ballots have been turned in with no names on them from this video. Was this what was in the boxes carried into the Detroit polling counter area on Monday night? And you can see that there's a wagon, there's people with like suitcases, and they're presumably filled with the ballots. Are the Democrats filling in names on these ballots as they count them? Michigan is a great state, but the Democrats in politics leading the state are crooks. Nothing is surprising with these people involved. We got then from James O'Keefe, we have a whistleblower from the USPS. And he's claiming, that they were supposed to put ballots off to the side. And then later that day, they're going to restamp them with the date that they need, which was 11/3. If they were, if they had, like 11/4, 11/5, whatever on them, that they were being put off to the side. This happened yesterday. They were put off to the side and then restamped with the date that was needed. And that's incredibly illegal. those votes shouldn't count, and pretty much all votes in that area shouldn't count, and the entire election there needs to be redone. The entire voting process needs to be redone. We got from Essential Fleckas. He's been going around putting in essentially dead people's names or possibly fake names, because there's been apparently a lot of January 1st, 1900 voters. People are apparently over 100 years old voting, 120 years old voting. They all had the same birthday, so it's looking very, very sketchy. He says here, turns out 118-year-old William Bradley voted via absentee ballot in Wayne County, Michigan. William Bradley died in 1984. I mean, they're putting in the dates of these people, and they're showing up. They're saying they're registered. They're saying that they got a mail-in ballot, and then it was received. And we're not just seeing 1, 2, 3. We are seeing dozens of dead people starting to vote. This video here from Essential Fleckas is the guy I mentioned earlier who was getting a little aggravated over. I think we'll actually play this one a bit. Let me turn the volume down. We'll play this one a little bit here, so you can see that he starts to get a little angry. He's definitely getting frustrated at something here. Skip ahead, because there's at one point where he literally crumbles the paper up. There you go. He crumbles it up, and that's already sketchy. This is already, you know, pretty much an invalid counting process just from that. Here we got the William Bradley one I had shown earlier. This is from Kenny Webster on Twitter. My friend John Walton died in July of 2019. According to TexasBallot.org, he voted on October 24th. So it's looking really sketchy. Looking pretty sketchy. We then have, I mean, you've got people then from left trying to be like, oh, there's these people here and here and here, but it's like, dude, they put their birthday in, they put the information in. I mean, unless all three of these people that all have the exact same name, all have the exact same birthday, and they're all different people, yeah, that doesn't then make any sense. Watch hashtag Nevada voter Jill Stoke on her ballot was stolen. She claims that, you know, they were basically stolen from their house. They, you know, they're being harvested by people. They're being then written in by random people. This is an old lady. She had her vote straight up stolen from her. Here we got from Tim Pool. Blocking transparency makes no effing sense. Update from at Mitchell Reports. The PA Supreme Court has overruled the Commonwealth Court ruling favoring the Trump campaign on watching the mail-in ballot count in Philadelphia. The mail-in counting is resuming. So the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania, which is heavily leaning Democrat, has voted against transparency. You would think if, you know, they knew they were going to win this, that they had confidence in Biden, they would allow as much transparency as possible to assure the people that they're being legit. But I guess they aren't. I guess they don't want to be. They sure as hell don't want to be. Here we got from Will Chamberlain. This is the same PA Supreme Court that allowed counting of votes. 1, received 3 days after the election. 2, without a clear postmark. They also apparently don't even need a signature. So of course there's going to be a fraud on a huge scale. Like, come on. In the words of Joe Biden, come on, man. Here we got from the Pulse Millennial. Trump supporters gathered at Arizona polling station, demand accountability and transparency. With the presidential election too close to call, Trump supporters across the nation are on edge. At least 150 of the president's supporters have crowded around a voting center in Phoenix, Arizona. Had a burp. Protesting what they see as a loss of integrity in the presidential election. Late Wednesday night, hundreds of people also surrounded the election center in Maricopa County, demanding accountability and transparency. The New York Times reports that many of the supporters expressed frustration that Arizona had already been called in favor of Biden by some news networks. The only way Biden can win Arizona is through fraud, one of the protesters said. I won't accept a Biden victory. I don't want to live under communist rule. I mean, apparently people's votes weren't being counted because they were being given Sharpies, even though they were the government, or I guess the governor and people at the polling, they were like, oh yeah, you can use the Sharpie, you know, it's totally safe to use the Sharpie, and then literally on the ballot it says do not use a Sharpie. So it's I mean, who should I believe? Should I believe the ballot? Should I believe them? I sure as hell don't believe any people in the establishment at this point, the elite establishment. Here we've got from Drew Thompson, Detroit election officials are currently refusing to let the public observe the counting process at the TCF Center. They have padlocked the doors. This is a disgrace to the democratic process. The crowd is now chanting, "Let us in," as many Republican poll challengers are still locked outside. I'm pretty sure it's illegal to actually chain up a door. That's safety concerns due to fire and the like. You can't really do that. That's incredibly illegal. Here we've got from Breitbart, watch Detroit absentee ballot counting chaos as workers block windows and bar observers. Absentee ballot counting in Detroit descended into chaos on Wednesday when hundreds of unofficial Republican observers concerned about fraud converged on the counting location. The city of Detroit is using the TCF Center, formerly Cobo Hall, to count all the absentee ballots in the city. And you can see that they're putting up basically covering to cover it all up. I mean, literally, why, if they're not able to get into the doors to the actual area here, don't allow them into there, but just keep them in there. Let them watch. Why can't you? Why can't you be as transparent as possible? Huh? It just looks incredibly sketchy when you then start to cover up all the windows. 'Cause that's not really transparent, is it? Here we got from the New York Times opinion. One of Trump's tweets looks like it had a typo. In fact, it was probably code to his most extreme supporters. So now the New York Times is basically spewing conspiracy theories all over the place. They try to say, oh, we can't allow all these conspiracy theories to happen, but unless we say it, it's okay. Yeah. This is such a mess. It's gonna end up going to courts to just such an extreme. Could then go to the House, which could decide the actual election. And I guess right now the Republicans have, the majority at this point to assure then a Trump win. I think it's by like two votes. But I mean, that's if, the Republicans actually vote for Trump. We're seeing a lot of Republicans not stand up to this blatant voter fraud. They're not saying a word. They're acting like cowards. It's like they're trying to hinge their bet on whether or not they want to go with Trump or they need to try to maintain some sort of, I guess, negotiation with the left or something, at least some semblance of power left in them. Because, yeah, I think a lot of Republicans, a lot of the GOP is getting scared, and I'd say, the Republican Party is just transforming into away from a lot of these GOPs, the rhinos, so it's all changing. The left is changing to become communists, and I guess the right is changing just to be complete freedom, complete transparency, and actually have morals, I guess. Well, I'll leave it there. I'll come back tomorrow if we have any more updates on any of this stuff that's going on, or, if we have more of it that's going on, I'll sure talk about it tomorrow. And it's a mess, guys. It's a mess. Especially with Nevada and Arizona. They're just saying they can't finish counting 250,000 votes. I'm sorry, but Florida managed to count 20 million plus in 24 hours. It's taking you more than 4 days to get this done. That's a disgrace. Utter disgrace by these states. And it looks suspicious as all hell. I'll leave it there. We got one more video coming up. We're going to talk about some of the protesting that's happened on the right and the rioting that's happening on the left, because the right isn't destroying windows to businesses like the left seems to want to do right now. So we'll get into it. I'll see you then. Have a good one.